Welcome to Please Excuse My Dead Aunt Sally, a show where I talk about stuff and sometimes you listen. In this week's episode, Mike leaves Suzy alone again. Oh, Mike, will you never learn? This week's episode of Please Excuse My Dead Aunt Sally is brought to you in part by soda. Cold, bubbly, crisp soda. Drink one today. An article published on livescience.com reveals that scientists recently combined human stem cells with chicken embryos. But why? According to the article, the scientists wish to study how embryonic cells organize themselves so they can better understand embryo development and cell building. But we know what they're really up to, right, Alex Jones?
I was told by a genetic engineer about a project they were on in England once, and I never told the story on air because it's so fantastical. Oh, God. They had in tanks people with gills. There were little babies there where they're just gulping, clawing at the sides. You see a turtle at the zoo and it comes out, you feel for it. They got humanoids crossed with fish and stuff. I mean, we are screwed, people. I mean, do you understand that?
So what do you think, listeners? Are the Bogdanovs behind this Chimera craze? That's all for this week. Until next episode of Conspiracy Corner. And now, the conclusion of the Wilhelm Scream. Armed with nothing but her video camera, she made her way to the address, which was written in blood-red ink on a wilted cardboard coaster. She wasn't sure what she'd been expecting. A warehouse? A studio? A complete replica of the Bates Motel? Maybe. But not this. The address was in Burbank, but it was on the outskirts, far away from the filming district. It was a completely nondescript strip mall. The only point of interest is that it seemed completely abandoned, not a single open business in it. She parked her car in the empty lot inside. She'd been tricked by some loser in a bar while she was drunk and impressionable. She knew that now. Just as she was about to drive away and find the nearest bar to drink away her sorrows, something caught her eye. It was just a flicker of movement from behind a dusty shop window, but it was enough to stop her and catch her eye. She looked closer. Am I going nuts? She could have sworn she saw a small, hooded shadow dance across the window once more. She parked her car and with a shaky hand fired up her camera, pointing the lens in the direction of the movement. What the fuck? She muttered as she counted 1, 2, 3 hooded figures dancing in an empty shop. Her heart raced as she crept closer and pressed her face against the window. One of the figures appeared to be no more than 3 feet tall, while the other 2 were freakishly tall. Over 7 feet if she had to guess, but maybe they just looked lankier next to the little one. They all wore hooded cloaks and twirled in the unlit shop, completely unaware of the girl observing their strange ritual. She should run. Everything in her told her these people, if they were even human, didn't want her there. She shouldn't be there. Her heart sped up, getting ready to run, but her feet remained glued in place. She had to know. As all of her instincts screamed at her to get the hell away, she raised a shaking hand and rapped on the window. The dancers stopped immediately and whirled to face her. Even behind the dirty windows, she could see their pale faces and entirely blacked out eyes. She screamed and fell to her knees, but she couldn't run. Those strange creatures held her locked in place with their hypnotic black eyes. As she stared, they slowly began to morph into one tall, spindly creature with a neck like a snake and arms like coiled ropes. What the hell was this thing? That's the last thing she thought before she fainted from pure terror. When she woke up, she almost expected to be on the other side of the glass, in the abandoned shop with the strange creature made of 3 horrifying humanoids. But she wasn't. She was still outside the shop window, and there was no creature at all. Had she imagined everything? Was she going crazy? Still, she should get out of there. But as she turned to go to her car, a sound like a lashing whip cracked through the silence, and she felt herself being held by invisible restraints. Then she was being lifted up, up, up to the roof of the building. Cars on the road passed by and nobody seemed to notice a thing. Or, even more chilling, they noticed but they just didn't care. She was released and went crashing through the roof into the abandoned shop. She felt bones shatter and splinter from the fall, but her wind was knocked out. So she lay in silent anguish, waiting to regain her breath. As she writhed in pain, the tall creature stepped from the shadows and split into 3 individuals once more. The little one whispered in a voice that sounded like screeching records and told her, "We are the makers of nightmares." One of the tall figures put a long cold finger on her forehead, and suddenly she was full of the answers she had so desperately sought. She could see through his touch the powerful filmmakers and their evil deals with the devil to be successful. It was all true, the conspiracies, the scandals, the pure and utter debauchery. But she couldn't stop it. Her camera had smashed in the fall, and she was now being slowly torn into pieces by these monstrous creatures who were behind it all. And she realized in horror that she knew the origin of the scream that had frightened her so. Because that scream, the Wilhelm Scream she heard right that very moment as she met her demise, was coming from her own throat. The Wilhelm Scream was her own. All right, listeners, this week we have a question from Brody in Tacoma, California. Brody writes, "Dear creators of Please Excuse My Dead Aunt Sally, when you and Suzy played Conspiracy Theory on episode 4, the phantom time hypothesis was discussed. Suzy needs to be fired immediately because she clearly confused the phantom time hypothesis with a well-known phenomenon known as the Mandela effect. I'm not going to explain it to you in this letter. Look it up. You'll see I'm right. Suzy gots to go." Well, Brody, this is awkward. That wasn't a question. That was not a question. That was a statement. And who lives in Tacoma, California? There's nothing out there but an abandoned, haunted date ranch. Anyways, Brody, thanks for keeping it real, I guess. Well, that seems to be all we have time for on this week's episode. Music today was provided by Kevin MacLeod. As always, you can send your listener questions to pleaseexcusemydeadauntsally@gmail.com or hit us up on social media. Thanks for listening.
Hey, you're a fucking idiot. We're all doing that. Bye-bye.
I mean, do you understand that?